Welcome to the Natasha Helfer Podcast. To help keep this podcast going, please consider donating at natashahelfer.com and share this episode. To watch the video of this podcast, you can subscribe to Natasha's channel on YouTube and follow her professional Facebook page at Natasha Helfer, LCMFT, CST-S. You can find all her cool resources at natashahelfer.com. The intro and outro music for these episodes are by Otter Creek.
Hello, everybody. This is Natasha Helfer, and we are going to have a podcast today about couples. And so welcome to the Natasha Helfer Podcast, where we try to fight shame and all things negative with education and stories and anything we can throw at it to just kind of have it dissipate. We don't like the shame. So we want it to go poof. Anyway, I'd like to introduce you to my guests tonight. I've got Jamie Lewis and Kenley Anderson. Hello. And they just survived with me our first ever Natasha Helfer couples retreat. We called it Unwind Together. I think that all three of us needed like 2 days afterwards to unwind just from all the hoopla of it. But we wanted to get together and just have a quick discussion about the many things that we noticed and experienced with the amazing 6 couples that attended our retreat this last weekend. It's pretty sacred work. I have always felt that. I have always felt that to be invited into a person's primary relationship is a pretty big honor. And there's something kind of very, for me, spiritual about that. And I think we definitely had that experience. So anyway, before I get started, Jamie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you come from, and Kenley, you as well.
Okay, my name is Jamie Lewis. I live in Perry, Utah. I'm a mama. I have 3 kids, a daughter and 2 boys. I'm a photographer. I work in marketing, and I love Natasha. And I love you too, Kenley. I'm happy to be here.
We are just a love fest.
Uh-huh.
That's right. And you played a huge role at the retreat with your mother as kind of the preparers of the food, which is a huge job. And you also did the majority of our photography. So thank you so much for all of that. And Kenley, yeah, tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Kenley Anderson. I live in Sandy, Utah. I am also a mama, 2 kids, 2, I don't know if I can call them kids anymore, one 19-year-old and a near 17-year-old, so rounding adulthood. My background is I'm married to a fireman here, local fireman here, and then I ran and operated a business for 12 years, sold that business about 2 years ago, decided to go back to school full-time, and I'm currently in my schooling to become a psychologist eventually. So I'm just trying to lean in and gather all my stuff that I can from Natasha and learn. And again, like to echo what you said, just being in a sacred space with so many people to trust me to help facilitate it. So I was, my kind of role up there was I helped coordinate the people who we did programs with or had special events going. And yeah, just to be kind of the catch-all for anywhere I could help out.
Yeah, awesome. No, I could not have done this without either one of you. So thank you for that. All right. So we wanted to share kind of just a few thoughts, things that we observed. It's interesting as I've worked with couples, one of the things that I think is so important is intentionality, right? I think everybody who's been married or partnered for at least a year or more will agree that it takes effort. And in a world where I think we get a lot of like soulmatey type messages and romantic messages about how everything's supposed to be so organic and beautiful and lovely and easy, that's not really the case. And I think most people have heard, somewhere along the lines that marriage takes work or relationships take work. And I don't think we want them to take so much work that you're miserable. At the same time, they do take effort and intentionality. And so one of the things that I'm really always impressed with couples, whether it's just a date night or, spending some monies and traveling to go to something as, kind of involved as a retreat, especially something that is going to challenge your marriage, right? Or that you're going to go and and get some help, which means that you're actually saying, hey, we might be struggling with a few things. To be able to be brave enough to do that kind of work for me is always really impressive. So the fact that these 6 couples showed up in the ways that they did, to me was very cool. We had a big diversity, and I guess, Kenley, I'll have you talk about this first, as far as what it was like to have people walk into the, as they were coming in that first hour and a half as people were arriving. But we had mixed faith couples, we had post-religious couples, we had couples who'd been together for 20 years plus. We had a couple that was just that they've been together for a few years, but they're getting married, next year. So, young and older and experienced and with kids and without. So we had people from different cultures and backgrounds and races and ethnicities. So it was, just for 12 people, there was a big variety. Yeah. So tell me what that was like to kind of manage that initial everybody welcome to our space.
Well, it's interesting because as you watch the couples walk through and you see them enter, looking back on it, when they first walk through the door, they're like, oh, are we going to like the people that we're with? Are we going to get along with everybody? Oh, this feels like we're walking into a space that's very vulnerable. And do I want to share all my stuff with this person, like with these people? And where's my room? And where's kind of my safe space? And they're all kind of like, can you just, immediately, like, can you show us where our rooms are? Like, we don't want to hang in the common area. We just got to get to our room. And it was interesting to see that. And then they're all trying to kind of mesh and like, oh, everyone's kind of feeling each other out. Like, okay, so tell me a little bit about you. They're trying to decide, how vulnerable do I want to be in this space? And all the couples that we had there, I feel like really integrated well with one another really, really quickly. I don't know if that was, maybe Jamie, you can say if you agree with this, but I felt like they kind of walked in and I saw it. And one of the other things was that when they walked in, them just as a couple, they weren't really affectionate with each other. It was kind of like they were coming in with this, I don't know, like we're coming to a retreat and maybe we're going to talk about things. And so I'm just going to kind of keep you at a distance. I don't know. That might have just been my own perception, but they weren't very affectionate with each other. It was just kind of going through logistics, if you will. And that definitely changed as we went through it. And that was exciting to see. I guess we'll talk about that later. But that was something that I noticed right out of the gate, was just some hesitation all around.
As you were saying that, did you guys ever watch Real World on MTV?
A long time ago.
I wasn't supposed to watch it, but I did, obviously, because it was fun. And it's like the people show up. It's this whole same thing that you're saying. It's like, I think the thing was like the real world, like when people stop being polite and start getting real or whatever. And it's like that too. You're like, oh crap, like what's gonna happen over this weekend? Like, is it gonna get crazy? Like, are people gonna fight? Like, how big are these problems? And like, maybe they have problems, maybe they don't. I don't know why they're here, but like, just ready, the anticipation of like, like, is it gonna be spicy? Like, what's gonna go down? Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a really important part as a host, right? I think all of us were hosts to this process. It's important to set the tone, right? So I think that the tone was set a lot by just your generosity, your hospitality, both of you. But then I think it's really important, as we did gather kind of for that first evening, to formally set a tone, right? So I had some disclosures, I had some expectations, I had some, kind of guidelines about how we could interact with each other, especially if we do have different belief systems or different political stances, right? Or whatever those things are that can kind of get a little spicy, right? If people don't know how to manage. And I think, Jamie, you picked up on kind of like this idea of permission. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, you're always so good about that too. Just kind of like telling everyone like, okay, this is how we're going to speak, for me, kind of setting those guidelines, which is very, very helpful. Yeah, and you did too at the beginning. You told everyone like, hey, this is going to be a condensed weekend. We have a lot going on. We have, these group sessions where we're going to, go through these relationship things. We're going to have one-on-one sessions. And then we're going to break it up with some fun stuff like yoga, breath work, whatever. And when it gets heavy, if and when, take a break. Like you don't have to show up to this. This is your weekend. We're here to support you however we can, and we would love for you to show up. And also we would love for you to take care of yourself if you don't. And the thing that I thought was so amazing was everyone showed up to everything. I mean, these couples were awesome. Like I genuinely fell in love with every single person there, and they just came to like work and to play, and I felt like it was such a balance of both. So I really, really enjoyed seeing everybody, even in the morning, the super early morning stuff that we had to do. Like they were all there, in their jammies. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah, we had
Loved
yoga
it.
on one of the mornings, and then we had kind of like tantric breathing and connecting one of the other mornings. So that was really great. And yeah, I really enjoyed those things that we had. I think one of the things that I noticed right off the bat, it's just my own anxiety about making sure everybody's comfortable, right? Making sure everybody's okay. And we started off with a beautiful ceremony from one of our Ute tribal leaders here, and he offered a land acknowledgement, but then he also wanted to offer a blessing and thoughts for each couple and for all of us who were going to be there. And it was just so beautiful. And because I work in this intersection so much of religion and mental health and relationships and sexuality, I'm always very nervous about making sure everybody feels comfortable, right? So were people who are maybe feeling more agnostic or atheists, were they going to be comfortable with this kind of spiritual leader? Were people who were maybe more, concentrated in a certain religious belief, were they going to find offense with a different type of spiritual, speak or things like that? And I don't know why I was worried, because it went beautifully, but those are the things that are constantly on my mind, having served the communities I have served. It's just wanting everyone to feel comfortable. And I do think that this is something we struggle with as people in general, right? Like when we do have these religious differences or political differences, as we see many times on social media or in our general kind of whereabouts, it's hard to get along with people that you don't agree with. So that was really tender for me to notice my own stuff coming up, while also watching everyone who came from such diverse backgrounds being so welcoming and open to, especially an Indigenous leader of our community here, and his thoughts and his perspectives. So I don't know if any of you have any other thoughts about that particular part of the weekend.
I definitely had a very similar experience to you. So Larry Sespuch, who is the Indigenous leader who came in and helped facilitate that, he's very well known in the Ute community, and he offers a lot. But I was like pumped and also nervous, right? And I was really happy that you gave kind of the disclaimer beforehand that, take and leave what feels good, and leave the rest that maybe doesn't. And during his blessing and land acknowledgement, there was a lot of, for me, similarities of like receiving a church blessing or something, and I felt myself kind of like, oh, and looking around to see how everyone else is feeling. And I noticed, Natasha, you're kind of squirming in your chair, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. But then I would watch several of the couples get up, and they were so moved by the things that he had to say, and just the connections that he made with their own personal stories, that they were really moved. And all of a sudden, my worries, my insecurities, all of my things that might have been making me feel a little, they just kind of went out the window. And I was like, look, people are going to use this. They're doing what Natasha said. And it turned into a beautiful way to open that entire weekend. And I feel like it just put everybody in this open space. And I think that's what Larry wanted to accomplish. And he did just that. The three of us just needed to get out of the way, get out of our own heads. And then he provided a really, really wonderful experience for the couples.
Yeah, and I know that he gave me a blessing as the healer of the weekend. It was just so profound, so profound to be in that space where somebody could, say those things and use the materials that he had brought to, I think he used eagle feathers and things to just kind of, wave away bad spirits and bring in good spirits. And, it was just profound. So I learned how to take my own medicine of letting things flow, right? I often, as people come to me as a counselor, I see all these things and I'm like, oh, kind of like you just said, get out of your own way, like let things flow and let things just be easier. And that was a good lesson for me to take my own my own medicine on that one. Okay, so I think, another thing that we noticed a lot was the gathering around let's just go to the introductions, because after the tribal leader did his ceremony, we sat up for another time and we introduced all the couples introduced themselves. And what was so interesting about that, and I see this in every group I run, right? It's like somebody has to go first. And I'm always like, oh, I'm so sorry that you have to go first. In fact, oftentimes I'll go back and ask the first person or first couple, like, is there anything else now that you'd like to say? Because it's just so intense to be the first ones. And sure enough, by like the second or third couple, things were flowing, we were laughing, and like one couple, the husband was like, yep, this is what we're dealing with. And it was just like all out there, and everybody was like, well, it got real, like 10 minutes in and it's real. So I guess what's so powerful about that to me is that this is the human experience. When we can get real, when we can get vulnerable, when we can, let down some of those guards that we're all trying to protect ourselves with, that is when we heal. That is when we are open to shifts in communication, or shifts of patterns, and when we can feel not so alone in our own shiz, right? And I mean, we're all struggling. So I think it just, a big reason why it's so important. Like I think of, the first football player who came out as gay, or the first, musician who came out as transgender, or the first couple who said they were going to be non-monogamous. I mean, I'm just thinking of, just in our culture, as soon as you have something like that happen, you now gave permission. It's so scary to be that first, person who opens that door. But as soon as somebody does that, there's like 500 other people behind them going, oh, me too, me too. And that is so like comforting and reassuring when we all live, I think, in spaces where we are worried. Are we broken? Is there something really different about us? Are we weird in some way? So yeah, that was something I definitely noticed. And I think, Jamie, you had said that you had really noticed that idea of couples sitting and talking about taboo topics in particular. Do you want to mention anything about that?
Yeah, I echo everything you just said. I think everyone was just so vulnerable, and so they were just there and trusted us so much. They kind of just handed it over and was just like, okay, we'll do whatever. I mean, one couple jokingly was like, it's cheaper than divorce. Yeah, let's go. Which I appreciate. But I mean, and going into kind of the schedule that we had, it was like we had these couples. There was a little, anticipation, hesitation coming in. They were a little reserved. And then, Larry came and did his beautiful ceremony, and that kind of broke the ice a little bit. And then it was like every single thing that happened after that, we just kind of grew individually and collectively and had these beautiful experiences together. One of which, we had a girl come in and do breath work. Her name is Jessie. So she came in and did breath work. And I remember the beginning of hers, she's saying how we're going to go through these exercises. And I mean, she's brilliant. She broke down the science of it and explained what she was going to be doing and how we were going to receive it. And at one point she said, and we're going to scream. And it's just, trust me, it's great. You're going to love it. And it's not weird. And I'm going to scream with you. But I was like, there's no way. This is so awkward. This is so out of my comfort zone. And if I'm feeling that, I know that these other couples are feeling it as well, probably. But, we all laid on our little mats and we had our little blankies and our eye masks. And she walked us through this amazing, I don't know who all has done breath work, but I am hooked. I'm converted. But she walked us through this amazing experience, and we screamed so loud, and everyone screamed, and it was like chill bumps, like everyone felt it. It was just this beautiful collective experience. And once we got out of that, it was like we're all just looking around, and I mean, several people were crying, and just it just felt so unified and so beautiful. And yeah, just the coolest experiences, the coolest group of people. I was blown away.
To add on to that, so I did not participate in the breath work like you did, Jamie, because I wanted to make sure I was, trying to capture moments and make sure that if I was there to facilitate that particular thing with Jesse. So I wasn't down in doing it. But what I noticed and I thought was so impactful, and it's almost a spiritual experience, was that when the people came down, they were laying down, they're getting ready for the breath work. Nobody really knows what they're doing. They're feeling kind of like, okay, so they all get in their spots, like everyone lays down. They've all got their like space on the floor. And it's like, don't touch me. You're too close. Let's scoot over. Like everyone made sure they had their little space. Then the breath work starts and we start going through it. And everyone just jumped in 100%. Like nobody was hesitant. Nobody was not breathing all the way. And I, as feeling the energy in that room was incredible. Like I had to start moving my body just to keep up with the energy that was just flowing through the room. And then as people like the screaming and they were experiencing kind of the inner dialogue that was going on, what I witnessed between the couples was they started to scoot closer to one another. I saw hands reaching out, and they're like, as partners were crying, as they were experiencing something very moving, hands were reaching together. They were taking care of one another versus like, I'm in my space, don't touch. It now moved into this caring, very compassionate space, even the couples together. Like, so there was, like the partners that were linked up, but also that they're watching the other couples and making sure they're okay. It just turned into this beautiful experience that was such an honor for us to be part of. Like, I just felt like the fact that people would participate in the fullness that they did and then allow us to facilitate that special space for them, like how sacred. And that was just something that was really moving, really powerful for me to watch and see the couples come together that way.
Yeah, there were lots of opportunities like that when we sat together, in Tantra, and this other lovely facilitator really offered us some lovely language around giving versus receiving and taking versus allowing, which was just really wonderful. And such a part of especially sensuality and sexuality between couples. But in this particular facilitation of the breath work, I remember one of the men coming up to me afterwards, and he's like, I think this is the only time in my entire life where there's been a container to express emotion in that way, because you think of screaming, like, especially here in the United States, like we're not really big screamers and you're not supposed to scream, right? And screaming is bad. And, we have all these negative connotations about using voice in a loud way. It can feel scary, and especially if it's used in anger, amongst people. But here was this container to use your voice in a loud way to express the many things that we can express that are difficult. Yeah, and as I went through that exercise myself, I mean, I screamed my little living heart out, and it was interesting that the first time I had done this exercise once before, even with this facilitator, so I kind of knew what to expect, but even though I knew what to expect, I didn't really expect the emotion that would come from that. So the first scream, there were two screams, amongst a lot of other things, just so people who don't know what we're talking about. It's not like we're just screaming the whole time. There's a lot of just like, it's really mostly about breathing a certain way to kind of tap into different types of aspects of yourself. But the first scream after I did it, I just immediately started, like, this emotion just started coming out of me, just tears, not for any particular reason. It wasn't like I was thinking about something sad but it was an expression. It was an expression of feeling. And then the second time we we did that, I started laughing and giggling. So it was another release of type of expression, which again, I didn't have any reason for. It wasn't like I was thinking of anything funny, but that was just so interesting to me that it's usually through tears and through laughter that you have that pressure valve, right, of emotions release in your bodies. And this facilitator was at least very successful in getting that out of me. So that was lovely. Being the person who was around the food, you think about groups, you think about tribes, you think about pack animals, you think, there's this very much kind of joining around food and what food means, and kind of like the gathering, right, of the people around the tables. So Jamie, what did you notice as a lot of that was happening kind of right under your nose as you were preparing everything? So
Yeah. I mean, first of all, my mom and I just decided to be caterers all of a sudden. And we decided, we could go. This retreat is gorgeous, and this cabin is immaculate and beautiful. And, we could prepare these meals that look amazing. Or we can prepare meals that just feel good and taste good. So that's the route we took. We went for ultimate flavor, and just, wanted to create a home cooking experience for these couples that are leaving their families and their kids and traveling. And we just want to make some good damn food for them to eat while they're here.
You did.
It was delicious. My mom's amazing. She gets all the credit. I washed a lot of dishes. But I was noticing, everyone was always ready to eat and very excited to come over and fill up their little plates. And, there is something about just gathering around food. It's therapeutic. And every night was different and day. We had 3 meals a day, and, people would come and they would kind of, I noticed like it wasn't cliquey at all. Like everyone would get their food, and then depending on what had happened that morning or that day, like discussions would happen, and, people would start kind of breaking off and getting into really intimate conversations with each other. And I was lucky enough to, experience some of those and hear people talking, and and again, like so many different people, so just diverse backgrounds and different situations, and everyone just had something to gain from every other person there. And, it was really, we just became a big family over the weekend, just having family dinner. It was great. I loved it. It brought me so much joy.
Isn't it powerful how people can sit around a meal and just, it's like you break bread with people, and then suddenly you're talking about the most intimate details of your life. And I think that's what brought that to all the activities that we had, like when Carrie Cox talked about, like you were talking about, Natasha, the give and take and allow and receive, and it was very intimate, some of the things that people were talking about. But I feel like sitting at a dinner table talking about kind of the crap we all have that nobody really wants to discuss, but sitting in that same common space and realizing that you're not the only one, you're not this anomaly, we're all trying to navigate it, and then being able to go, okay, I got this, and we're going to go down into this next space, which is going to be intimate and vulnerable again. And you know what? Everyone here is in the same boat. So I feel like I can really open up with my spouse or my partner. That to me was part of the magic of dinner time. I was always looking forward to dinner time, because that seems to be when everyone just threw it all out and said, here's what we're dealing with. I loved it. And that was something that you and your mother really created, Jamie. And that's it. I just, hats off to you, because you guys did work really, really hard.
And the range of conversation was impressive, I mean, it was like, we talked about everything. I either was involved in the conversations or I would overhear conversations. I mean, there were talks about culture, there was talks about extended family, there was talks about death and, illness. There was talks, of course, about kids. There was talks about anti-racism, and, we had several people of color and from different cultures. And so kind of just expressing those kinds of experiences that, people were open to hearing about and discussing. We talked about faith and religion and, all of those kinds of journeys that people have had throughout their lives. I mean, it wasn't just like, oh, what do you think about, the World Series and, and how's the weather? These were like deep conversations that, I mean, when I'm looking for new friends, this is the kind of stuff I really enjoy talking about, and it's hard sometimes to know how to get beyond those niceties of when you first meet people, kind of the more deeper conversations. So when you're spending all this time, even though it's just a weekend, first of all, learning tons of ideas and principles about relationships, which was that was my role, and then putting them into practice, because we had quite a few experiential times, and then these facilitators, it just opened up a richness of humanity that it's hard to find that sometimes, when I'm just trying to make new friends. And I really do think that the benefit of coming to something like this is you're going to meet people you're more than likely going to try to get together with again. Like you said, we notice people exchanging phone numbers and emails and, inviting, like if you're ever in California, if you're ever in Arizona, like wanting people to reconnect with them. And that's, I think, really special, especially in the community that the three of us reside in, which is kind of the post-LDS Mormon community, where I think so many people are lonely and wanting those connections with a group of people that they used to find fairly easily, maybe in their congregations, right?
I was just going to say that after, post Mormon, it's sometimes hard to navigate how to find those friendships. And I felt like everyone there just really was authentic and brought humanity to the table.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I like to say at the very beginning is, and maybe this makes me a bad marketer, but I don't like to be crappy in my marketing. I don't want to be like, I don't know what the word is, like marketing like unrealistic expectations. And I notice that a lot of times, when there's retreats or workshops, people will be like, this is transformative, this is life changing. And I'm like, I don't know that this will be life changing. I don't know that this will be transformative. I think it will be helpful, right? So I'm probably not a good marketer, right? Like, this will be helpful. It might benefit your life. So I probably get a D- in the marketing department, but I feel like that's honest, because when you're dealing with like 10 to 15, 20 years of issues, of patterns, of relationship distress, of wounds, of betrayals, let's put a weekend into perspective, right? At the same time, the feedback we get is so amazing. Like, they do use those words, right? Like, this was amazing, this was transformative, this was life-changing, this really gave us a different perspective on our marriage and gives us such hope going forward. And so it's, hard when I've been raised in a culture that you're just supposed to be humble and give all the credit to a divine being or something to sit with that kind of feedback. I'll just be honest about that. That's hard for me. And at the same time, it's so honoring. And I think people really did tell me some very beautiful things. I remember one of the men as he left, and I don't know exactly what he was talking about. We had talked about so many things, but he said to me, I've really had so many perspectives change this weekend. And I could tell it wasn't just about his marriage, maybe it was about the people he had met, or some of the conversations we had had, or even having something like a land acknowledgement and remembering what kinds of lands we're on. I don't know what he meant by that, but I was just so touched with how he looked at me. He really looked at me, like dead eye, and said, this was very, this changed a lot of my perspectives in my life. So that's pretty profound to be involved with something like that, right? And I know you all had similar experiences with people who shared things about how you touched their lives, or how others in the group changed some of their thoughts.
I was just going to say, yes, there were several moments when kind of the same thing. Just to echo what you said, Natasha, you always hate to be like, where you think it was more transformative than anybody else. And they're like, oh yeah, this was, but I really did feel like we watched the couples grow. And I also think it's important to just to note that I think an experience will be what you're going to make it. And I think that the couples that came had very open hearts to sharing with not only with each other, but with the other couples that were there. They really had a desire to either communicate better or to thrive in their marriage, or figure out how to just even thrive with communication if it wasn't going to work. Like there were different couples in different phases. It wasn't like everybody was, navigating the space of we're gonna make it. But what they were navigating and doing really well was having an open heart and an open mind to the possibilities that didn't have to be something toxic, or that maybe the way that they had done things maybe could use some fine tuning. And I just thought that they all showed up with intentionality. And I think that's why we can sit here and say, I think it was really impactful.
Absolutely. And Natasha, I think it's great. You can teach your brilliance, and then Kenley and I can do the marketing because it was transformative. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. It just was.
Pass that over.
I'll use the big words. I'm not scared. No, it's helpful for a little bit. And I was talking about this earlier to someone, but like your lessons and the way that you teach, I've been to, couples therapy before in my life, and you have these hour-long sessions and you just start getting into it. And then it's like, okay, bye, we'll see you next time. But this wasn't the case. And I feel like there was so much information just condensed, and it was all so relevant. Like I'm sitting back cooking food and watching, you teach these group sessions, but I was like, oh my gosh, like I could write all of this down and like implement it right now. Like, it's just so useful. These are skills that everyone is leaving with and using in real time. And it's like, yes, it's helpful in the moment, and then it's rippling and exponential. I felt like everyone left on such a high note with actual tools that they were already implementing, they were going to keep. And sometimes you just need something to get you out of your patterns. You just get in these grooves as a couple, and it's like, whether it's a weekend or whatever it is that gets you out of that, like that's huge. It is transformative. And in fact, we were talking earlier, but like we couldn't get these couples out the door. Like we had our schedule and we had our little plan and checkout time and whatever, and they just kept staying and talking and trading phone numbers and social media. And we were like, okay, we'll just pivot. We're going to let them stay because this is so enjoyable and everyone is having such a great time. And I don't know, transformative, I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we had a wonderful time. It was an honor and we found it very uplifting. And so we have decided this is kind of like a test run. And so we have decided to do this again. And so we're kind of officially announcing that the Unwind Together Couples Retreat for 2024 will be that first weekend in October, which I believe somebody can maybe check me on this, but I think it's going to be October 3rd through 6th, which is arriving at a Thursday night and leaving on a Sunday, kind of around right before lunch. We're going to have it in Alpine, Utah, and we have room for 10 couples. And we already have a reservation kind of link, and we'll make sure to share that here for people who may want to come. The reservation right now is refundable because we do realize that it's, a long time out. But if you take the non-refundable approach, I think there's a discount. I'll let Kenley explain that a little bit more. But what I do want to say is that 2 of our couples this time around were able to attend due to generous donors who offered kind of a scholarship. And so, because not everybody can attend, something that costs as much as a couple's retreat. So I always try to make it possible by raising funds or awareness that maybe somebody who couldn't come would be able to come regardless. So just in case, those of you who are maybe shifting your tithe monies into different directions, wink, wink, or whatever that may be, that although we're not a nonprofit, so that you can't really benefit from that. I don't run a nonprofit, but our donations are 100% given to people who we've had people donate before to our groups, to therapy or coaching services at Symmetry Solutions. And of course, if you're wanting to help a couple, even if it's not the whole amount, right, but just like a donation towards an amount for a couple to be able to attend something like this, which I think would be so beneficial for so many people, there will be a way to do that as well. So Kenley, do you want to share a few more details as far as like where they can find things and maybe what I botched as far as the information goes so far?
Yeah, if they want more information, they can just visit your website at natashahelfer.com. They click on retreats, and then it has the October 3rd through the 6th of 2024. If they pay upfront, which they can see the costs of that when they click on there, if they pay upfront, they get a 15% discount. They also have the option to hold the spot. Since we only have the 10 spots available, they can hold their spot for $500 down, and then they can pay that. The price on there, it's a little bit more if you don't pay it up front. So there is some benefits to paying it up front. But again, that allows for people to maybe, move their tithing money somewhere else, or, gives you an opportunity to save or get your tax refunds that are coming around the corner to put towards this as well. So we are really excited to host it again. And I think that to echo what Jamie said, Natasha, you do a fantastic job of giving people tools on how to help, not just let's just come together and talk about the stuff. You actually give fantastic tools of how to move forward and allow their relationships to thrive. And so I'm really excited and pumped for this October 3rd through the 6th of 2024.
Awesome. Well, everybody stay tuned. This little team of ours is going to try to have a few other things maybe under our wing. We're considering a women's kind of day, as far as reclaiming sexuality types of themes. We're also possibly thinking about doing an ethical non-monogamy group for couples. I know there's a lot of people who are kind of entering that land and also need a lot of support and help and tips and, community and all of that can be kind of a lonely road for those couples in many ways. And so we are going to try to do a few of these things. So keep your eye out for our announcements. And I hope that this was educational and helpful in regards to giving couples hope and maybe giving you a few perspectives that we can share just from our weekend. So thank you so much, Jamie and Kenley, for joining me tonight and for all the work that you did in making this such a successful time. And we'll talk to you on the next round. Bye-bye. Good night.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Natasha Helfer Podcast. To help keep this podcast going, please consider donating at natashahelfer.com and share this episode. To watch the video of this podcast, you can subscribe to Natasha's channel on YouTube and follow her professional Facebook page at Natasha Helfer, LCMFT, CST-S. You can find all her cool resources at natashahelfer.com. The intro and outro music for these episodes are by Otter Creek.
There is a place where time slows to nature's pace, and there is space there to find yourself in her embrace. Some places should be left alone. No tishki say the no, so we can always go to the homeland of the heart. 10,000 years of our human history etched on her canyon walls, alongside Earth's mysteries. Some places should be left alone. No tishki say the no, so we can always go to the homeland of the heart, to the homeland of the heart. deep in our cities. We sleep without her stars, yet still her presence sustains us from afar. Some places should be left alone. Nordishki so we can always go to the homeland of the heart, to the homeland of the heart, to the homeland